What if I told you that the history we were told ain't the full history? What if I told you that there were black slave owners too? Meet Anthony Johnson. In the early 1620s, he was kidnapped by African slave traders and sold to Portuguese slavers, who named him Antonio. They later sold him into the Atlantic slave trade. A colonist in Virginia bought him as an indentured servant. See, in the beginning of slavery, they weren't called slaves, they were called indentured servants, meaning they were held captive until they worked for a certain amount of time, usually 4 to 7 years. Once they finished their terms, they could freely acquire land and capital. See, slave laws wasn't passed until 1661, and blacks were not considered to be enslaved. So because of this, Johnson was an unfree laborer. In 1623, he married a woman named Mary, who he would be married to for more than 40 years and had 4 kids. In 1635, he and Mary finished the terms of their servitude, and he changed his name to Anthony Johnson. By 1651, the government gave him 250 acres of land under the head right system because he bought 5 indentured servants. The head right system was if a man brought an indentured servant to the colonies, he was granted 50 acres per head. Johnson had 4 white servants and 1 black. He even bought his son's contract. And yes, white people were slaves too. Johnson ran a tobacco farm using indentured servants. He also owned 40 slaves. He treated his slaves well. He wasn't mean, he wasn't harsh, he was fair. He and Mary farmed 250 acres while the sons owned 550 acres. In 1652, all of a sudden, the Johnson plantation caught on fire and he took a big loss, but was able to recover because the courts exempted his wife and daughters from paying taxes. Then he had to go to court because his white neighbor was trying to steal one of his slaves, and he ended up winning that case. Slave name was John Kaser, who became the first person declared an enslaved person in a civil case, even though it said John Punch was the first documented slave. This was the first case in which a servant was sentenced to a permanent servitude without committing a crime, which unfortunately paved the way for what we know as slavery today. In 1657, another neighbor forged a letter saying Johnson owed him a debt. Whether it was real or not is still unknown. Johnson didn't fight the case, and even though he was illiterate and couldn't read or write, the court still awarded his neighbor 100 acres of his land. So Johnson moved his family to Maryland and leased a 300-acre plot for 99 years. He turned it into a tobacco farm named Torrey's Vineyards, where he established a free black planter community in Northampton. He passed in 1670, and Mary passed in 1675. After his death, the judge ruled that he was not a citizen of the colony because he was black, therefore giving his land to a white colonist. Like, share, and leave a comment and let me know what you think. Follow for more stories.